Good morning, everyone. This is Violet Price from SUNY Downstate. Just want to say, hope you guys had a wonderful day yesterday at our first day of SUNYLA conference, which is normally always a great event, and we always have a good time. Next year, we'll have a better time because we'll be in person together and be able to see each other and have a little bit more time to just fellowship with one another. We're going to go ahead and get started. I am serving as your moderator for today. And it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Matthew Smith, who is Director of College Libraries at SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry, also known as SUNY ESF. And he is going to be presenting along with Casey Koons, who is also at SUNY ESF and serves as their scholarly communications librarian. Matthew and Casey are going to share how the library gained internal support for a transformative new initiative to increase ESF's competitiveness in the research funding and communication landscape. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Matthew and say welcome and thank you for presenting during our conference.
Well, thank you, Violet, and thank you for all your help and extra work in making SUNYLA happen. I'm very grateful to be here. And I'll tell everyone right now I'm on vacation and the Wi-Fi seems workable. But if anything falls apart, Casey will run with it. And thank you, Casey, for running the slide deck and doing the infrastructure for our presentation. I really appreciate that. All right, there's our contact information. Do please feel free to reach out to us and ask questions as we go along. As I think that'll make wrap up easier, so you can maybe have a little break before your next session, whatever the case is. But we do have time built in for questions at the end, which we're glad to answer to the best of our ability. And this is a learning process as we go along, and this is a paradigm shift in what the library is, and we're going to talk more about how we got there. All right, and feel free again to contact either one of us at any point. So 2020 was an interesting year for all of us, of course. We learned a lot about ourselves and our capacity in that year. In a lot of ways, it was easier for us to pivot than a lot of our peers or our colleagues at our institution. We're a very lab and fieldwork based college, obviously, but as a whole, we did pivot. We delivered our curriculum. I think we did a pretty good job with it. But with the time, with the shift in how we did our work and the diminished effort on, maintaining a physical presence and a physical facility, it really allowed us to, pay attention to our systems and processes at I think, a different level. And, during that and, due to what I would describe as a couple of failures, not due to our part, but due to the, non-system and technology, we came to the conclusion it was time to make a change in how we handled our repository and as well as invest in our future in the institution. Next slide, please, Casey. So to do this, we really put our heads together and I think came to the conclusion that we should just do what we've always done as a library, and that's focus on solving other people's problems. We are here at the intersection of people, technology, and needs, so let's play to our strengths, on that front. And particularly, ESF is, I think we're in a good and improving place right now, but we've had a lot of leadership changeover in the past few years. So there's been some vacuums and, inertia lost, but at the same time, it's very nice now with the management we have coming, that are establishing themselves here now. They're not micromanagers. They do empower folks to make decisions and identify priorities. So, in terms of weathering what we've been through the past year, still there's not a whole lot of insight in what the budget situation will look like going forward. Quite honestly, our budget capacity is about half what it was just a few short years ago. We've been able to weather that through really aggressive renegotiations of contracts with vendors. So the loss has been minimized to the campus, but there's no more room to find anything there. So we have to build capacity. So in terms of building capacity, you know, libraries are a cost center. I don't have the resources or time to turn us into a direct revenue generator or find revenue streams. So let's invest in technology to do that. Um, and invest in the faculty, invest in supporting the faculty, invest in supporting the researchers. And this is how we got support to do that. Next slide, please, Casey. And one thing that has become very clear running a repository, working at this institution, liaising, is ESF is a best kept secret, and that is a horrible, horrible reputation to have when it comes down to it. In a lot of ways, our reputation is stronger internationally than it is locally and nationally, and we've got to fix that. So money drives it all. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. What do we need to do to change this situation? Well, it's invest in these items, and working with the Committee on Research, Academic Governance, Office of the Provost, Office of Research Programs. Again and again we hear these challenges come up. So that's what defined these 6 priorities, and one of which is of course our own priority, which is to make sure we are connected with the research activities at every point we can be. And part of what made this possible is a lateral staff transfer from the Office of Research Programs to someone who's worked there for about 40 years, into the library to fill what was the library administrative assistant line, but we've reworked that position to develop programming there. Casey, next slide. That's you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Casey Koons. I'm the Assistant Librarian for Scholarly Communication at ESF. And in addition to enabling better access to our researchers for funding of their research, one of the other major challenges we realized here this year was the limits to our existing institutional repositories and the workflows attached to those. And what we determined was that we really didn't have a system. And with that lack of systemization, it became just a series of ad hoc kind of sort of relationships around specific projects. I don't know if this sounds familiar to anyone here, where that you would determine, right, like how are we going to proceed, just sort of like in a case-by-case basis. And so what we really needed was to address the shortfalls in the capacity of both the researchers and the library in order to facilitate getting the research that is conducted at ESF out and into the wider world, open access, and available to change that reputation, to boost that image so that we're not a best kept secret, but we're known for the work that we do, things such as the work that we did in the 70s for acid rain and the work that we're doing right now relating to climate change and sustainable energy. And the technologies that we had at this time could not support that. So we identified that we needed to have a unified user experience with and a system that could reduce the load on both of us. And I will talk more about that in a slide or two.
All right, so and this is where we really started to make progress and advance and realize what we had to do kind of internally to achieve this. And this has been a lot of communication and discussions and dialogue, even at a very casual level, personal level, between faculty, researchers, administrators, ourselves, to figure out where we need to go. And yeah, and I mean, this all began months ago at this point, with with solicitations of, pardon me, of what where these bottlenecks were identified and what the particular problems were, the shadow work of faculty and researchers as professional lines and administrative lines, haven't gone filled. So it became clear that, well, these lines aren't going to be filled. And, we need to deliver tools to do that. And, ultimately, this developed the concept and vision of what we need to do, to put these funding opportunities, out in front of the people that need to see them. And, that is, going to be integrated. We're working on it now with a website, complete website overhaul, which I'm very glad the library is closely involved with. Casey is closely involved with that, to integrate the technologies, where people are, where they see them, and through their existing processes, with research programs. And the product for that is Pivot RP. I mean, I don't want this to sound like a sales pitch, but in terms of, the staff time we have, the investment we've already made in, Esploro and Primo, and the ease in which we can integrate, through the application programming interfaces, to get these alerts and this information and deliver the tools to people, that was our real single option. And you know, demonstrating these products to faculty and researchers, this is where the interest was. Oh wow, I can develop, this, automated messaging, or I can create a group, to share this out to the colleagues, internally and externally, that I'm collaborating with. I can identify new colleagues to collaborate with as a mechanism to pursue funding. And as well, the important points of, proxies. That's a big thing that deals with the shadow work. This way the research assistant of a faculty member or researcher can, do this work for them, or a designated administrative support person to not create more work, or the library can. We can't support everyone on an individual level per se, but we can train people as to disperse the load. And that's a big part of it. The ability to, both internalize and externalize the work, so that, no one entity is really overwhelmed, and to offer, a level of flexibility and automation that we just cannot, offer right now. And then the important part of analytics and insights on where our money's really coming from, who's utilizing it, who's meeting, their, funding requirements, etc. I mean, that's not stuff for us to judge. That's administrative, at the college level, but hey, it's there where we don't readily have that, and we have to do a lot of manual work, to create that right now. And this honestly is going to come at the expense of, and less effort on collections and less money on collections. It is a zero-sum game, and I think we've learned very clearly since the Elsevier negotiation, which I was part of, and the subsequent campus level renegotiations, that most of the crap we buy is useless crap. Yeah, I'll be blunt. There's so little value, that I can see in so much of the collections we were historically paying for. So it was honestly pretty easy, to absorb what's been a 50% budget cut since 2017. And we've really lost a minimum of content, that people actually, really, I want to say almost no content that people actually use rather. And that's what has allowed us to shift efforts. Just, take that money, invest in tools that will build institutional capacity. All right, next slide. That's you, Casey. Thank you.
So one of the things that put us in this reflective state, you might say, was the SUNY mandate of all SUNY universities and colleges to establish an open access policy in order to get the research that's being done across SUNY institutions out open access and not locked behind paywalls in such vaults such as Elsevier's and the others that we subscribe to, which really limit their accessibility to many of the people around the world. And this, on April 21st in 2020, our academic governance process approved the ESF open access policy. And I just wanted to show it. It had two asks in it. So in the first place, it added the shadow work, you might say, on all researchers on the campus to effectively deliver their research to the library at the point when it was about to be published someplace. All right. And then commensurate with that, the library was expected to have a system of some kind that could make that article public. And I will say that I was involved in drafting this policy and moving it through the process. And we didn't encounter that much pushback. But I don't think that's because there was an overwhelming support for open access. I think that's because this policy has no teeth. And the faculty recognized, right, like that there's really nothing the library can do if they don't give us their research. And they're right. And I bring this up because I do from other channels I have, and I'd be curious to hear from those of you in other places how you've seen this is a general sort of lack of respect for open access among the faculty. Certainly, it is nothing compared to the scholarly publication that is attached to our promotion and tenure processes. And that's something that we in the library, we can't sort of break that relationship, that connection. But at the same time, I've heard in conversations some real misrepresentations, and this is something that I've got to figure out how to get this communication and let people on my institution know the truth, right? But some real misunderstandings about how successful open access and our open access efforts actually are. I just pulled this up this morning. So this is the last 90 days for our theses and dissertations collection, a collection that I will explain in a few minutes hasn't been accessible for that long. And we're just a little bit more than 7,000 downloads. And you can see what Matt talked about in terms of our international the awareness of our institution on the international stage. And I see that on a day-to-day basis when I look at our repositories and where we're getting a lot of page hits, where we're getting a lot of downloads. So we talked about how disconnected systems are no system at all. So this is kind of the story of like those kind of like ad hoc sims. So we got researchers, they've got to give their research to the library wants to put it in the repository. So this is kind of a story of how that has traditionally worked here. So the researchers can go to our website and there's a Google form on the website that connects to a Google spreadsheet that the library has access to. And you might ask, well, why didn't we set it up so the researchers could submit direct to the repository? It didn't give us enough control over effectively the kind of questions that we wanted to ask, right? Like, because oftentimes when research comes to the library, it's really the start of a whole new collection, the start of a whole new project where there's going to be additional research that comes in and it wants to be grouped in a certain way, in a certain collection, with possibly certain aspect, access restrictions, licenses, so forth and so on. So the the library gets a hit on our spreadsheet. We're like, okay, this is ready, but inevitably there are questions that follow. And then, so how do we answer questions if there's questions about the metadata? Well, we'll probably send the researcher an email, right? Like, or, maybe like it comes up on Teams, or maybe it comes up in one of our Zoom meetings, or, maybe this is part of the college that uses Basecamp. Not the whole college does, but like there are some departments that do, and they want to keep the discussion on a Basecamp thread. And so you can see there's no consistency as to where the conversations take place, where communication on these issues sort of take place. Another issue related to that need to establish new collections that we see in this lack of a system is that the first time that the library knows that there's new research is when the spreadsheet gets updated. And that's late in the process, because oftentimes in order to establish those collections in our existing repository, we would need to interface with our IR provider, a process that also like relied on various modes of communication. I added time to the process. So we had to rely on that IR provider in order to prepare the repository for the new information. Now, it would have been a lot better if we could have had some sort of warning, right? Like that there was research coming and we could have gotten this set up ahead of time before the research was complete. But sadly, that doesn't tend to be the case. And then finally, the library can get the information, the research asset, into the repository. Or I should say one of our repositories, because in our current state, in our institution, we actually are operating two, because one of our repositories is really good for documents and photographs, PDFs and the like, but doesn't have a very strong capacity for tabulated data, computer code, that sort of information. And so we actually are maintaining a whole separate repository for that kind of stuff. And you can see the disconnection there. Finally, is any of this related to our other digital collections? Not at all. This is all happening outside of our main library collection in Alma, and none of it's accessible via our discovery service Primo. It's all, well, some of it is, I should say, but it's all largely disconnected. So what are the consequences of these disconnected workflows? Well, we've already talked about the lack of capacity on researchers and the library, right? And I didn't mean to sound unfair to the researchers, right? Like, it was, the open access mandate was, let's face it, it was an unfunded mandate, right? And many of the researchers here at our institution are extremely busy. They have an enormous amount of responsibilities that they have to stay, and adding to them another sort of ad hoc process of like, oh, I've got to go to this site, to this Google form and so forth, right? Like, really was in many cases too much to ask. It's too much to ask. Similarly, the library doesn't have the capacity to do this work either, right? Like, I don't have the capacity to chase after faculty to be like, have you produced, like, what have you produced? What is published recently out of your department? We have this catch-22 where we need, ideally we want collections to be formed before we have assets, but we need the assets in order to define what the collections are going to be. That slows things down. There's no defined ways for stakeholders to communicate. So depending on who we're liaising with, like, is it the Office of Graduate Studies? Is it the research office? Any number of stakeholders, there's different communications technologies that each of those departments favor. And so you end up having these conversations happening on all these different sort of channels. And what's the problem related to that? Well, the problem related to that is that stuff gets lost, right? Like, communication gets scrambled and lost. And then there's the final problem of the poor system integration, right? So I want to tell a story about how this lack of a system can cause real problems. So one of the things that we faced, which really exposed this issue with communication in this process, was a lack of a way for the graduate office to be able to communicate when electronic theses and dissertations were ready to be uploaded. And because of this, rather than uploading the ETDs on a sort of regular basis, a few at a time and so forth, we attempted to do a bulk upload with the data that was collected from the Google Sheet, and an error in that Google Sheet basically broke the whole collection. And deassociated every ETD, all the ones that had already been in there, along with the ones that we were trying to upload. It broke the links to everything's PDF, and everything went dark. And that was an issue that took about 2.5 weeks to repair, and it was a messy job. So how are we going to address these issues? So we are deploying an ex libris product called Esploro to serve along with ALMA-D as our new institutional repository. And one of the most exciting things that Esploro brings to us is that it addresses that critical issue of capacity. It provides an algorithm that identifies, we provide to Esploro all of our researchers. We set them up. We're in the process of doing that now. This is one of our researchers, Timothy Volk. And the system will create what's known as a research profile for each researcher. And this is a page that will show, you see there's this output button. It'll show all their research output. But what's really exciting about this product is that it locates and updates this page with research output automatically using connections to Ex Libris's wide cloud services, and I think a certain amount of pretty sophisticated machine learning. It's a very sophisticated algorithm. We'll go out to all the other databases on the web, look at areas where research is published, identify, oh, this is Timothy Volk, and we'll automatically update this page with that person's research output. Now, each individual researcher will also have access to this page. They'll be able to configure it. They'll be able to, do as here, put whatever information they want, as well as manually add research to their page if they choose to. And I'll note that they would be then adding it directly to Esploro, directly to the research repository, and we wouldn't have any of these long sort of ad hoc kind of transferences. They could just go to output and click add item, fill out the metadata. So under Esploro, we have a direct connection now to researchers and to the library. The repository is accessible to all of us, and it is exceedingly easy. So this addresses an additional point of other stakeholders, other people in the process. It is extremely easy to loop other people into the process. So when I'm working with the graduate school on theses and dissertations, right, with Esploro, what I will now be able to do is I will now be able to create user roles for people in that office. I could create a user role. I'm already in discussions about this. I'm going to create user roles for graduate student assistants in that office who are doing the work of processing the theses and dissertations, working with the students to make sure that they're formatted correctly, and getting that final approved draft. And then that means that that individual can work directly in the Esploro app. And when they are ready, they can approve it in the Esploro app, and it will automatically push to whoever needs to see it next. And this system integration will allow the library, myself and others in the library, to be able to see when research is coming, to better prepare for what metadata, what collections or metadata might need to be gathered together. And then finally, that issue of integration, because Esploro is a product of Es Libris and is part of their family of library products that includes our integrated library system, ALMA and Primo, we'll have much better integration between those systems. So we will have a much greater ability to, for example, say, define a specific sort of research collection and really highlight that within our discovery system and within Primo, if we choose, right? We'll have a lot of flexibility there in terms of different ways that we can really share our research with those digital visitors that come to our site. So in short, or some other things I should say that sort of come with this is that we're working with the communications office here to integrate features of these products into the new design of the college website. So we're working for those researcher profiles to be integrated into the website in such a way as they can serve as kind of the primary page for the researcher and give them that kind of communication.
Yeah, and just to further iterate on that point, not to interrupt, it'll both be, it'll integrate with our directory, as well as become the faculty profiles. And both have been problematic at the institution because of a lack of infrastructure overall. So this is an institutional investment in infrastructure that, as Casey explained, is an automated process with machine learning. So it again takes the work off of people's plates, largely. So they might do some polish, but they don't have to build from scratch. And that's what we've been doing all along, is building from scratch. And that's part of how we got support for this. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to add those very important points.
Oh no, that, and I totally agree. Thank you for jumping in and adding to that point, because I think that is one of the most exciting aspects of this product and of this implementation. So I think there are a lot of benefits clearly of bringing the research out. We've already talked about connecting researchers with partners outside the university. But one thing that I hear about a lot, I work with a lot of the graduate students. And one thing that I hear both from students and from faculty is that prospective graduate students for our institution have a hard time connecting research with faculty, given our current systems. So they might come to our website, or they might see that there's some research that's being conducted here at ESF and be excited and be like, I want to do that. And then the website as it exists and other systems as they currently exist do not make it easy for them to figure out who the primary researcher attached to that project is. And the result of that is that hits us in the recruitment and retention of graduate students. So prospective students that might have chosen to join us, join our programs and so forth, they bounce off and they end up someplace else. And so that's one of the most exciting things, I think, in terms of this outreach.
And I'll note that graduate students are a disproportionately large part of our student body. We're about 1/4 graduate student, and we're like 2,000 students. We're a pretty small institution. So attracting the best graduate students we can and retaining them is really critical to institutional success. And somewhere where we've not invested properly.
Yeah, it's really critical. It's connected directly to the research that we produce, because a lot of the graduate students are the ones conducting much of that research, right? So the quality and the number of graduate students we can recruit is directly connected to the quality of the research that we produce. Something else that I'm excited about this integration that I touched on with our second repository, I didn't sort of include it in the imagery and so forth, is that one of the things that Esploro is bringing is we're going to be able to unite our two repositories. So I'm very pleased that going forward, if we have a paper, right, research asset that's a paper that we can put on the open web, that we have the capacity now to attach data to that same record and to offer that sort of complete package, because increasingly that's what is being called for, is the actual research data, so that people can do different forms of analysis, and really the kinds of analysis that are possible if we can get a significant amount of this data out, are really exciting, because there are it creates the possibility for both people at ESF but around the world to be able to do cross study analyses that could be really quite important. So
that is the rapid fire summary, of how and what points we've engaged the campus on. Well, since I'd say November last year, October, maybe even farther back than that. I don't know. Time doesn't mean anything anymore. But that's how we got to where we are and got that vision of what we need to do, and that we're going all in. This is investing in institutional capacity. This is beyond the library, and we're taking ownership of this and using our resources and our time, to really build institutional capacity, and leading off by focusing our efforts on solving other people's problems. And with that, we're a little bit early, but we'd love to have some questions or comments from the group. Can profiles be enhanced with text or other elements? Yes. So there is a customize. You can customize these profiles, in different fields, and they're constantly being developed. And I'm very pleased to say, even though we're still in the implementation stage, Ex Libris has been receptive to our enhancement requests already. It's been a very encouraging dialogue that say, hey, we can do this right now, but this is how we envision the product being implemented. It seems like this is feasible technically. Can you look into this? And they're working on ways to do that for us. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, to the question of do they need to manually create the profile? No, that is not the case. We're currently working. Part of the implementation process is to identify all the researchers attached to our institution to generate those initial profiles. So they don't need an ORCID ID. They don't need any kind of other ID, although they can put those identifications, link those to their profiles, and that will help the algorithm. It will also help connect them, their profile for other people. And yes, they can turn it off. They can,
but I don't think the institution's going to give them that option anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We've been doing that too long, and that's part of the problem. They can choose to do nothing with it, but that really is an administrative decision, and it's directory information, and everything that should be available. So yes, they can opt out of participating in any direct level and just let the machine learning do its thing. Mm-hmm. They can designate someone else to take care of it, or someone could tell us, or someone in the department to clean up that profile or whatever. But I don't think that's going to happen very often, because there's been a lot of excitement of, wow, I could list my graduate students there, or point to the program opportunities I have to recruit more graduate students, or those things like that. So I don't think we'll see many of the opting out, but
I don't think so either. In the majority of in all the conversations that I've had with the faculty on this product and how the researcher profiles, they've been excited because one of the, like I said before, one of the issues with our current website is that it is difficult to locate individuals with that attached to their research. It's difficult to find information about our faculty at all, right? Like, and so
thus the challenge of even generating a list of our researchers.
Yes,
How far behind we are on infrastructure.
That is a non-trivial problem of just a list of people producing research on campus.
Yes, exactly. So Pivot RP is Pivot Research Professional. It is a massive funding, database of where you can create both broad brush or very nuanced searches, to identify appropriate funding opportunities, for your level and type of research and what you're trying to achieve. And including that is a database of research professionals. So all our faculty will be going in there too. A lot of them probably already are, but there'll be profile enhancements with that. So, that's, what a Pivot is in a nutshell. It's a truly massive research funding database that is global and can target nearly any opportunity anywhere because the pure scope of it. And it's putting these tools for a researcher to either create or have created for them the type of search alerts they want, and as well as the institution and the Office of Research Programs to do that, invest their resources in doing that as well, to seek out other ones to push them in front of people as well. It's you're really stunning the capacity. Chat link to sample faculty profile. Geez, do you have one of those handy? Yep, awesome, thank you. And again, this is a sample profile, that has only ran for a couple hours and doesn't have really any human touches to it, and because it's a sample profile, doesn't have like ESF data, branded stuff in there yet. So just keep that in mind. Hold and publish the profiles forever beyond the time the researchers at ESF. We haven't decided that yet. That's a bigger decision than us. It is at a basic level for affiliated person, but we want to have record, of the work they did while at ESF. We'll answer that in the coming months or years, but we have, a bigger lift of getting it up and going first. But good question, and one that's on our list to answer.
Samantha, the question, how much local control and responsibility will have running Explorio versus an outsourced hosted product? So this is actually something that I'm really excited about, because Explorio is going to offer us more local control than our existing repositories. So in our existing, with our existing repositories, we have to communicate with the providers to do such things as establish collections and do certain shifts to metadata. And so with Explorio, we will be able to do that in-house. And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, because that was one of the things that was really adding time to our ability to process research assets, was waiting for the providers to get the system set up for us.
So Joe's question, migrating, yes, we're migrating from bpress and Dataverse to Alma D. I'm thinking probably 4 months migration.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what we've planned for so far, and going.
In terms of who's doing the lift, yes, Ex Libris is doing a tremendous lift on this. Yes, we did pay for premium migration services, but you got to pay for it somewhere, and it's either staff time or money. And if it's staff time, there's other things that aren't being done at that time. So in this case, it wasn't hard to make the sell, to the administration that we just simply have to pay for the premium migration service. We're down one librarian line. Who knows when or if we'll ever get that back. We've lost a half a clerk over the years. It has to be done from somewhere. And I will say, bpress received the message when I told them we would not be renewing, because of a host of reasons, that they got it and are cooperating pretty well, with Ex Libris to, get stuff moved out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great questions.
Excellent. Yeah. Any others? And certainly, like Matt said at the beginning, feel free to reach out to us as this migration goes forward.
Maybe you want to bring that slide back up, Casey. So
yeah, I'll put this back on there. Fly through all the.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. So we're pretty excited, and the campus is excited to have these tools and invest in technology, that has been, really done manually. I mean, without a true research database like PivotRP, it's really arduous to go out and find, funding opportunities, and colleagues to collaborate with. And just at a basic level, the internal communications we anticipate improving as, we could create department level alerts, program level alerts, and I envision, though not in our initial iteration, really integrating this into the graduate student recruitment process, where when a graduate student contacts us, they can sit down and, have a consultation about, well, you're looking this way, this is the faculty member you're looking, to work with, let's look to see what funding opportunities are feasible. That's step 2, though. Casey, I don't know. I don't see any.
I don't. So, yeah, like I said, feel free to reach out to us.
Well, we had a question from Zachary there. On open access policy.
I don't foresee that.
Yeah, I don't either.
What I have the hope and a fair amount of expectation is that this will allow us to actually to meet the mandate of our policy.
Yeah, capture more by lowering barriers.
By lowering the barriers. So I think we're going to be doing what the policy, it's sort of the spirit of the policy, really asked for, in terms of having a public sort of record of all the research that's being done here. That machine learning algorithm is going to help build that for us.
Yeah, and on top of that, it took you how many months to get through that through academic governance? We're not going to revisit that now that it's passed.
I don't know, 6.
Yeah. So that's part of the lift is, it's a good policy with good general language, that doesn't pigeonhole us. So God, don't open that Pandora's box and do that all over again.
When we drafted the policy, we were aware of the fact that we would potentially be switching IR providers within the lifetime of the policy. So it's worded in such a way as our rights to the research extend regardless of whatever repository that we use. We have the right to move them from one repository to another. So we're all set as far as those sort of rights are concerned.
Good question, though. Mm-hmm. I'd love to add teeth, but that's not our job.
No.
Not touching that.
I'd love to add an incentive.
Yeah.
I'd rather add an incentive to be like,
Yeah.
Here's some. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I there needs to be something, but that's well beyond the library purview. Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Yeah. Happy Thursday. Happy sunny day, hopefully, wherever you are.
Yeah.
Thanks to Matt and Casey again for presenting this session, and we wish you all a great remainder of your day. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care.